Good morning, good evening, whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you might be doing. We wish to welcome you to the Silverlight Show. The Silverlight shines to illuminate that which lies hidden in darkness. For those of you tuning in today, we welcome you in. I've been thinking a lot about Federal Reserve notes and the gold standard and all this other gobbledygook. And it's something where a person starts to research a system but doesn't really understand how it works. So sure, you might have a car, you might be able to do an oil change to it, but you're going to be screwed if you ever have to tune the thing up. And that's where most of the gold bugs come into this equation. Gold bugs are fond of pointing out that Federal Reserve notes, also known as currency, whether it's a US dollar, Canadian dollar, Australian dollar, German Reichsmark, whatever you want to do, or whatever you want to call it, they have no intrinsic value. Now, in this, they are correct. Pieces of paper don't mean anything. And I don't even think we have an estimate of how many are really out there. So in that part, they've done the first part of their research. And then there's this whole thing in 1913 on Christmas Eve. They pushed through the Federal Reserve Act so that way they could control the nation's wealth. No, it doesn't quite work like that. Yes, it's true it was pushed through in a lot of interesting circumstances, but I think we can find a rational reason for it. There's been a few countries that have tried to tie their currency to the value of gold, and it turns out to be a ridiculously expensive effort and a very restrictive one. Because if you tie your currency to that gold, you have to be able to produce said gold. Most countries, even the United States, doesn't have enough gold to redeem for all of its currency. Now, this is fractional reserve banking. This dates back well before any Federal Reserve. Goldsmiths and bankers used to know they could loan out more gold than they actually had, because not everybody came back to ask for it for once. Again, the gold bugs will tell you this. And this goes back to medieval times, might even go back into antiquity. I haven't really researched it much, and at a certain point, you don't keep accountant's records anymore, you throw them out. If your father was an accountant, you're probably not keeping track of everything, because that's what happened to a lot of birth records. Some monasteries were very diligent, managed to avoid getting raided, and were able to keep birth records dating back, hundreds, if not thousands of years. But the financial stuff, nobody kept track of it. Back to gold, though. So, while gold is a commodity for exchange, it really isn't. You can get yourself a gold coin. The British sovereign is considered the gold standard, pun intended, although you can get U.S. eagles. I can't remember what Canada is called at the present time. I think they're just gold maple leafs. And that is usable as a form of currency. Not because of the gold in it, but because it's stamped. This is certified by the whatever mint, and that's what actually gives gold its power. If you don't believe me, try taking a hunk of raw gold and paying for groceries in it. Buy some liquor, buy some cigarettes at the corner gas store. They're going to look at you like you had two heads. Whereas a gold coin says it's worth, say, $100. And I'm making that up because I can't remember looking up gold coin prices lately. So it is certified as a unit of exchange no matter how much gold is in it, and it's not 22 karat, it's probably 10 karat at best. That makes it certified for exchange. As individuals, we can make our own arrangements. We can agree to use monopoly money. If I make red hot peppers and you make apples, we can trade them and we can pass currency back and forth so that we can say, hey, I'm getting more peppers than you're getting apples. We can resolve that any way we choose to. And that's where essentially the economy comes from, is the fractional reserve currency. There's only a small percentage of gold backing the currency up. But our modern system would not be possible if we had stayed on the gold standard. Again, with the gold standard, there's only so much gold in the world. So the banks, even if they hadn't come up with fractional reserve notes, they would have come up with something else to represent the gold. I know during the Crusades they would give you a chit, and that was encoded on your chit how much wealth you had because you were making your trip to probably the Holy Land. There were other pilgrimage sites, but that was kept. The records were kept that way. We know this because the Templars, the Hospitallers, etc., did keep records, but even though those records are barely extant anymore, they also describe the way they did it. They weren't sending gold east, west, left, right, center. They were sending their own credit locally. They would use their own caravans to move gold about in the exact same way we use armored vans to move currency about. So you'd have to come up with some sort of a checking system to be able to move gold around without sending armored cars everywhere, because people know what's inside armored cars. They know what's going to happen. So even if the government hadn't come up with it, the banks would have for sure. It was a matter of sooner or later. Also, right now, when we're talking about, my local city just had a factory built at the cost of $220 million. Where are we going to get that much gold? And even though the factory has a sadly bright future, because they're making weapons or things that can be used as weapons, let me qualify that. And those are in demand in the world at the present time. But where would they get the gold if they needed it? And how would they get it compared to a company like Ford, GM, Chrysler? Gold hoarders want us to believe that currency is going to go away. Not anytime soon. Again, how do you go about buying something with gold and silver? It just doesn't happen. And the price of silver, I've held silver for 40 years for sure. When I started, it was like $7 to $11, and what is it now, $40? That's not a good investment over a 40-year period. Gold has gone up, but there's better investments you can do. But when a GM, a Ford, a Chrysler, a Magna, whoever it might be, decides that they're going to invest in a new project, they go to the bank. Does the bank hand them gold? No, hands them a big check, or in 2024 just transfers the money around to various accounts. Otherwise, how do you prove to a Ford, GM, Chrysler, Magna, Bombardier, whoever it is, that your city is worth investing in? Because if they got to get gold and transport it over to pay the workers, and by the way, how much is a day laborer's wage in gold in the present day? Probably not much. So you kind of need a mint to certify gold as being worth X, and they're the ones to control whatever formula they use. I know that they changed the formula in the 80s, because if you buy coins from before 83, they're supposedly pure, and afterwards they're not watered down, but diluted, I guess is the best way to describe it. Federal Reserve notes and fractional reserve currency is made for capitalism. As a lifeblood, it goes through the system much faster because it moves at the speed of light. Gold moves at the speed of an armored truck. Now, which do you think is going to get there first? Speed of light every single time. And I mean, how do you really value gold? If I'm hungry and you have a chicken and I have a piece of gold, does that mean I'm going to give you the $100 gold coin. Let's just pretend $100. I know it's nowhere close to 100. Are you expected to give me back silver, which you may or may not have because you spent yours on getting a chicken? And it's a whole mess, whereas anybody who has an event, say a garage sale, knows they need to go out and get some singles, some quarters, some dimes and stuff like that, because people are going to be up there and I only have a 20, but I'm buying a $2 thing. Can you make change for it? Any event you run, that's going to happen. Gold and silver, this is a very bulky system. Then how do we carry it? In the modern day, with debit and credit and PayPal and all the other virtual wallets out there, you can take currency anywhere you like. You can even have virtual gold, which represents supposed real gold in a bank vault somewhere. I trust that about as much as I trust a mosquito. Look, we have a lot of people clinging on to stuff that's literally 2 centuries old, if not older. Gold, people tend to buy gold and fashion it into jewelry thinking it's enforced savings. No, you have a pretty trinket. You go to a pawn shop, you go wherever it is, it's not valued at what the overall price of gold is. However much per ounce, what was it, $2,000 last time I checked? I haven't checked in a while. No, you get their, how am I going to put this? Because I don't want to insult the people that trade gold for cash, but at the same token, they're not giving the world's best deal. Because you already had it made into jewelry, so they're either going to have to sell it to melt it down, or they're going to have to find somebody who's going to buy it exactly the way it is. For example, an engagement ring. Does it have a diamond in it? Is it gold? Okay, we can probably sell this to somebody. I personally don't like the idea of buying a used engagement ring because it was sold for a reason. And do you want that juju coming into your life? Probably not. That's my personal opinion. You are free to differ with it. But that market and resale gold just doesn't exist, even though people are convinced it is. And maybe I don't know much on that because I've never really decided to go online and start trading in physical gold. But I'm sure it'd be fascinating if I looked into it. So remember, if we were on the gold standard, we wouldn't have the economy that we have. Now, it would be very stable because there just simply would not be enough gold and silver to go around. So we'd kind of be strangling ourselves, holding ourselves to medieval times when, you know, once a month you bring your chickens to the local butcher and he'd let you take a dozen of them home or whatever your deal is. You'd have to go off the monetary system and have other means of payment because there just simply isn't enough gold to pay anybody. You can trade in wheat, you can trade in all sorts of vital things, but actual payment is only coming from the king, queen, emperor, sovereign, whoever it might be. And that's what people forget. Is this system perfect? No. We can still have currency collapses, and that has been demonstrated in several republics. But being free of gold gives us the ability to inflate our wealth to such a high degree that even the ups and downs are not going to affect the overall economy. Like in 2008, the government just printed more money. And that did eventually swing the economy around. In 2024, I don't think that would be a wise idea. But you know what? It still remains a better strategy than if your economy is centered on gold. And what was the plot of Goldfinger? Wasn't it that the guy wanted to drop a nuke on the fort where they hold all the gold, to make it all radioactive that would make his supply more valuable? This is a very unlikely scenario, but there's a lot of things besides a nuke that you can use to render gold unusable. I don't know how you're going to break into the place and administer it, but there's ways. And one person with that power could destabilize economies, not just one, multiple. Gold is lovely. Oh, the other thing that we're in 2024, we're in an interesting situation. We got Elon Musk and SpaceX who have their own spacecraft. So if we decide to go right to the gold standard, first thing Elon Musk is going to do is find himself an asteroid, bring it down, mine it, however he's going to get it, and he's going to have the most money in the world. Maybe a guy like Jeff Bezos, people like that. But yeah, they're going to have an astronomical amount of money, quite literally, just by being the ones with the resources to go get more of the resources we depend. So that little stamp that says your gold is worth trading is what is the exact word on the coins? This is currency, and blah, blah, blah. I can't remember what's on the coins. All my coins are next door right now. I'm not going to run and grab them. Like next door in my house, not next door in my neighbor's house. I'm crazy, but I'm not that crazy. So let's not look on gold as a standard to be aspired to, but a historical standard that we've already improved on. And we've already started improving on that. PayPal, Silverlight made the biggest mistake of his life, but the same token, he did it for logical reasons. Because when PayPal came out, historically there have been all sorts of great ideas. Remember Google Glasses? Well, now Apple's picked up on that idea and they have their own version of it. Google Glasses did not get picked up because that technology really hadn't advanced yet. And looking at that historically, this usually happens. And I said, I'm not investing in PayPal and Bitcoin and all this sort of stuff. I'm going to sit back and wait. And I'll freely admit I was wrong. But you have to admit, my logic was sound. Gold is never going to go away. It's going to become more plentiful, but it's always going to be less plentiful than all the money in the world. People, you can't pay them in gold unless you water it down to such a degree that it's like the Canadian $1 bill. It has some fraction of bronze or gold or something in it. But when I say fraction, I mean like there's multiple zeros behind it. Because think about that, all that gold wrapped up in dollar coins. No system is going to be happy about that. It's just ridiculous. So next time you watch one of those commercials, hey, I'm Oliver and buy gold from me because the dollar is going away very soon. Ask yourself, if Oliver was so convinced the dollar was going to go away, why would they sell the gold, the very thing that they're marketing as being inflation proof, recession proof, etc.? It's always been the most sketchy thing when I see those commercials. Hey, buy my stuff because you'll need it. Well, if I was you, I would hold on to it till after the recession, and then it would have significantly more buying power and physical power. So they're not doing you any favors by offering you to sell it to you. It's because they know it's gold. It's not all that useful in the real world. So with that, we'll give you that to think about. We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Silverlight Show. If you did, please like, share, because sharing is caring. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. Don't forget to click the icon down below so you can be notified every single time that we drop a new episode. We hope you have a golden day.